Well, Donald Trump is back as the incoming president of the United States, and one of the first things on his agenda may well have direct bearing on millions of Indians and their children. The right to citizenship by birth is going to go through massive changes, which means if you are born in the United States, you will no longer be a citizen of the United States by default. A law that has benefited scores of Indians in the past, couples, new parents awaiting their green cards. But because their children or child is born there, the child is a US citizen. Now, the big change likely to be brought in this would mean that either the permanent residency or green card of at least one parent would be required for a child to qualify for automatic citizenship. The plan posted on the official website of Trump and Vance campaign site is to sign an executive order to this effect on day one itself. This is according to Times of India. According to Pew Research, US was home to about 4.8 million Indian Americans, of whom a whopping 34% or 1.6 million were born in the United States. If this executive order is passed, going forward, children born to Indian couples who are neither US citizens or green card holders will be ineligible to automatically become citizens of United States. Donald Trump believes that a blanket automated birthright to US citizenship encourages immigrants to come to the United States. He has said that hundreds of thousands of people from all over the planet squat in hotels for their last few weeks of pregnancy to illegitimately and illegally obtain US citizenship for the child. He had spoken this last year in May. Let's listen in to that clip.
My new term in office, I will sign an executive order making clear to federal agencies that under the correct interpretation of the law, going forward, the future children of illegal aliens will not receive automatic U.S. citizenship. My order will also end their unfair practice known as birth tourism, where hundreds of thousands of people from all over the planet squat in hotels for their last few weeks of pregnancy to illegitimately and illegally obtain U.S. citizenship for the child, often to later exploit chain migration to jump the line and get green cards for themselves and their family members. It's a practice that's so horrible.
Well, I'm being joined by Narendra Reddy, who's a Republican candidate, Georgia State Assembly, Robinder Sachdev, who's an author for Trumpotopia, Kriti Upadhyay, who's a founder for Indus Tech Council, as well as Kartikeya, who's an immigration attorney, as well as a political commentator. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining us. Let me just straight go to Kartikeya at this point. How do you look at what's really unfolding? What is being pegged as the first big decision by Donald Trump when he does make those signatures? How is this going to be impacting millions of Indians in the United States? Of course, we are looking at the impact on Indians, but it's going to be larger. But let's start with where Indians are.
I think there's a bit of lack of clarity about who exactly is it going to cover, because if you look at Donald Trump's speech as well as the post on their campaign website, it seems to specifically target illegal aliens or those who violate the law by crossing the border without a visa and then seek asylum, and they have children here. So it's essentially the purpose seems to be to discourage illegal migration if the goal is to have a child here and get the child the U.S. citizenship, which then makes it difficult to deport the parents because the child is a U.S. citizen and the child has rights. It also discourages birth tourism, which again, what is the word itself means tourism, which means people come here on either a tourist visa or those who don't require a tourist visa, as a visitor temporarily and strategically time their entry in order to give birth. What I'm not clear about is whether the executive order actually signed will also include people on long-term visas. So H-1Bs and L-1s, for example, are people on long-term visas, and they last 6 years. So I'm not sure if the order will include that. We'll have to see the actual language of the executive order. I know that there's one line on that page, which essentially says that federal officers will only be able to register citizenship to those who, at least one parent who is a U.S. citizen or a green card holder. So yes, that does throw a little bit of confusion in this regard. But I think let's wait for the executive order, and the reason is because the clause in the Constitution they are hinging this on is Article 14, which talks about all persons naturalized or born in the U.S. and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. So the Trump campaign's argument is that those who are illegally over here or those who come here as a visitor, they're not technically quote unquote subject to the jurisdiction thereof, which I think is another ground on which there will be a legal dispute. So no matter what the executive order is, whether it includes Indians on long-term visas or not, it is going to go through a series of challenges and potentially all the way to the Supreme Court, because this involves Article 14 of the Constitution of the United States. So I think at this point we should wait and watch what happens. I don't think even if it's implemented, I don't think it'll be in force right away, because there will be challenges to it and there'll be stays to it until the Supreme Court eventually gets to decide on it.
That's quite true, in fact, Kartikeya, but it's interesting because even within the Republicans, people are very divided. The legal opinions are very divided about whether this would require a constitutional amendment or not. That itself is very interesting to see how it's panning out in the United States. But Narendra Reddy, if I could get you in at this point, Kartikeya Tanna does make a very interesting argument, and he does say there's lack of clarity, which is true. But the fact that if there is a regulation which is brought in, executive order is what Donald Trump has said during his campaign, that at least one of the parents will have to be a U.S. citizen or a green card holder. This technically cannot differentiate between an illegal immigrant and somebody who is on a long-term visa or visa of any sort. So if you have a condition like that, you cannot have a differentiation, a discrimination, whatsoever you may call, depending upon which political spectrum one comes from, within that ambit all over again. Narendra Reddy.
Yeah, actually, I agree with the Kartikeya, and we have to look at the executive order for all the details. But one thing for sure, there is a lot of resentment against these people who are crossing the borders to US and having children here. Then they are showing that excuse, saying that my children are US citizens. How can I leave them? How can I leave them? Even if they give a deportation order, they're using the children as a front to stay in the country. There is a lot of resentment among the Americans against this kind of practices. The other one you are talking about is the 14th Amendment is very clear about the birth citizenship. Only thing is there is some kind of clarity, doubt in there is about whether legal or illegal, because in those days when the amendment was made, this discussion was not there. Anybody who is coming to this country illegally. So this could be for a interpretation, you will see. But one thing what happens is in this executive order, if it is clearly mentions, there have to be a green card holders, that will be immediately challenged. The federal appeal court in California or somewhere, one of the parents, of course. But even then, that is a clause that will be challenged immediately. If they in the appeals court, and they will suspend it until it is decided by the Supreme Court, US Supreme Court. But meanwhile, what happens is, if the executive order says those who are illegally in this country, that may go, and even the appeals court may not give a stay order on that one. That is a very good possibility. But we have to look at it. Yeah, Trump got elected, and the main purpose is, one of the main contention is about the immigration. That means uncontrollable immigration. Well, so if it is going to be, there is an executive order, it will include people who are legally in this country, in the sense, except for the visitor visa, he may grant for all other purposes, like a work visa and everything. He may honor that one. Their children will not be will be given a citizenship according to the current law. But if it goes beyond that one, like all the people who have to have a only green cards minimum, that will be a big problem for particularly Indian community because our applications are pending there for a long time and we have a big line in front of us. Neither they will be here nor they will be in India. So that will be a big problem. My thinking is there will be some kind of clarification on the executive order. It is going to be mostly directed towards the illegal immigrants.
Right.
Okay, that's going to be interesting. But Rabinder Sachdev, if I could get in, and since Narendra Reddy also spoke about the long wait, there's a study on that. We'll just get to that in a bit. But Rabinder Sachdev, if I can get you in. So, I mean, everybody is talking about Donald Trump's victory. Obviously, the world looked at it very closely. And what it means for US is very, very clear. US is yet another country that's going to be looking hugely inward. While that happens, there are two things. One that is coming up is about this whole talk around the birthright to citizenship. And then you have H-1B visas. Either ways, the population of India, the huge diaspora of India that's running into millions, and at least 34% of them are born in US, according to a census and a survey done by Pew. It's going to be a very hard watch and wait situation for them. How are you looking at this pan out?
No, thank you so much. I think you've summarized it beautifully, and our earlier panel has also captured the essence. The way I look at it, there are three categories for this particular issue. One are illegal immigrants who are illegally in America and who have children. Since the child is born in America, automatically American citizen. Trump will move against that. The second is, let's say, the birth tourism. There's stories and data about, rich Chinese, wealthy, wives coming down for 2 weeks, having a child, and American. These two categories, I think, will be targeted straight away. The H1 issue, I think that will be later, but what it indicates, the trend is going to be towards that. What essentially, if we look overall in American context, is that the big principle is that reducing immigration, illegal immigration, whichever sorts of immigration, and wanting in America only people who have talent. Let's say that's where it's heading, merit and talent kind of a thing, right? Now, so it will be layered. These kind of executive orders, the executive order that we are talking about right now, the Trump team has maybe over 100 such executive orders drafted out, memos made, which on day one, Trump will start signing. We don't know what all those orders will be. We do, of course, some of them, but regarding immigration. So this order that could be signed, it could be like banning travel from Islamic countries within 3 days of his presidency in 2017. He will, I think, definitely take this step because he wants to show himself strong on immigration, right? So this order will be signed, but yes, as our colleagues are saying, it depends on the nuance in the language. My sense is that the first and clear would be that illegal immigrants, if any child is born in the US, not a US citizen, one. Second, for birth tourism, whatever, they'll narrow down. Now comes the third one, which is the one of interest to us in India and Indians, is the ones, if you're on H1, okay, and you applied for a green card and you have married, many of us have done it. I've been there. I've done the same also, actually, right? And you have a child, your child is born, your child is not technically an American citizen. He or she is in a certain limbo or whatever category till age 21. When your child crosses age 21, the child has to go back to somewhere out of America, big picture. This will have a huge impact on the Indian American H1, especially workers. They're about, I think, approximately 500,000 out of the total, numbers of the Indian diaspora in the US, various categories, citizens, this, that, etc., H1 workers. They're about 500,000 to 600,000 on H1 visa in the US. For them, it means, and most of them who applied for green card, as I was saying, which takes a process of 10 years, 15 years. So what happens? You are in the US, you're in your age group of about 24, 25, or maybe somewhere there. After your F1 or sent by your company, working there in H1, you're around age 30. You've had about 3 or 4 years in your company, and now you apply for your green card. So what happens? And in the meanwhile, you marry around age 30, 31, 32. You have a child. You and spouse are maybe both on H1 or your spouse is on H4 dependent visa. You have a child. Now that child at age 21 will not be automatically an American citizen. That child will have to go back to wherever. And remember one thing, this is nothing about India. This is a generic application to the law that Trump would apply. So, or bottom line, what I mean to say, firstly, illegal immigrants, birth tourism, but it definitely raises a flag of concern that this could be the future even over time. And just last one more point. Okay, the tech industry in the US will oppose this. Depends how much clout Musk carries or the tech industry carries with Trump. They will oppose it because from a very philosophical point, you want talent for your innovation. If for the talent you create such a situation, the talent will not go to America, or by the time they've done their 3 6 years of H1, they've earned some little money, you cannot see a future for your family, you come back. So what the argument will be made, other than the legal arguments, I would say, would be that this is dangerous for American innovation economy. So thereby, I think, and therefore, I think that this step of this third category being, kind of ruled out for American citizenship will take time. But you know what? This portends the future. This will be the future, if not now, in 10 years' time.
That in itself is warning. In fact, today, External Affairs Minister Jay Shankar also, spoke about Donald Trump being elected. And it's interesting, he said Donald Trump's election as a president poses a huge opportunity for India. Kriti Upadhyay, let me just get you in at this point. Kriti, it's a long wait to get that green card. I mean, there's a research which has come out from CATO Institute study. It's a credible study. I mean, look at the staggering numbers that indicate the long wait to possibly get your green card. There's almost a 1 million plus employment-based green card backlog from India. I mean, look at the kind of numbers. 1 lakh plus children of Indians will age out, turn 21 by the time possibly their green cards would be approved for those who are already, some of them who are already on the long wait. What the Trump administration would be mulling or may even sign during the first week of him taking over, how is this going to be looked at by the Indian diaspora? Not just the Indian diaspora, there are a huge lot of Indians who are even looking to move towards the US in the interim period.
Well, thank you, Sneha, for having me firstly. And I think this was a very consequential election, mostly because of issues like this, immigration, abortion, economy, which were right at the heart. And we were expecting some of these very contentious things, right? When we talk about this executive order that you're talking about, which is yet to come, what's really at the heart of it? It's the question of dreamers. Dreamers are these kids whose parents came in illegally, and then the kids usually wait to reach a certain age, and then they're, of course, legal citizens in America, and based on that, they get their parents and others to become legal citizens as well. And this is something which across the board, a lot of nationalities, a lot of people have been using. But let's not forget, this is also a question that has Democrats and Republicans divided for some time now, starting from Obama, right? So this wasn't necessarily a surprise. And this is something that is sort of aimed at the dreamers. I do think that we should wait and see the letter, because I do believe that overall, the Trump administration has been against illegal immigration, but they're actually quite for legal immigration of skilled workers. And when we think about India, that's the first category that comes to mind, skilled workers, right? So I think there are going to be certain space. Well, firstly, we have to see, just like Kartikeya and others echoed, whether this stands the legality, right? Because you have something enshrined within the Constitution, the 14th Amendment. How does it play with that? Is it going to go through? If it goes through, what sort of watered down version does really come out? Secondly, you need to, I think I'm pretty hopeful, I could be wrong, that there are going to be warrants in space for folks who are on a H-1B, O-1 like me, or L-1 or some other visas. And I also think it's not all gloom and doom. So I just want to end on a positive note that the Trump administration has said that they're going to be doing some very positive things in immigration too, which actually affects most of the Indians that do come, because they do come on a legal route. They do come as skilled workers. For example, Trump administration has said that they want to hand out green cards to folks who, do a master's degree or a PhD from America. I mean, I look back 7 years back when I got my master's degree, right? Same as Rubinder from American University. I mean, that would have been a great thing to do. UK is already doing it. If you're from the top 100 universities, you can pretty much stay, scope out for 2-3 years and look for a job. Secondly, they've also said that they're going to be revamp the H-1B because, and in a positive way, right? So maybe certain things will be more stricter, but to allow just skilled workers coming in. But they're also going to make it more open so that right now, if you have a H-1B, which is capped, you're pretty much stuck. It's very hard to transfer within H-1Bs and so on. So I think there's going to be some positive news too. And that positive news really is the one that we need to focus on, because as far as US-India concerned, the relationship is concerned, most of the diaspora is concerned. This is one of the, diaspora that is the, most wealthiest within any, looking at any ethnic group, including whites in America. It is the most educated, and it is the one with the most household income. So I wouldn't be worried too much about how many Indian Americans it affects or immigrants it affects.
Right. Kartikeya, if I can get you in again, you also mentioned this, as well as Rabinder Sachdev also mentioned about this birth tourism. Could you explain this to us? I mean, because Rabinder Sachdev, of course, mentioned about these rich Chinese wives who would come in, but it's not just China. You also have cases where in India, people have moved to US for birth tourism. What is this about, Kartikeya?
I mean, it's essentially, expecting mothers strategically time their entry into the U.S., on the 7th or the 8th month of pregnancy. And when you enter the U.S. on a tourist visa, you get 6 months to stay in the U.S., which is, which 1 month into it or 2 months into it, you're about to give birth. And because you are able to give birth in the United States, you get U.S. citizenship by birth, which is the current law, or at least currently how it's interpreted. Now, when they get citizenship, what's the purpose of that? The purpose is that, in future, if they want to go to college in the US, then, they can go as US citizens. They don't have to apply for a student visa. If they want to apply for benefits of some kind, they can apply for that as well. So these are, ways in which people time their entry into the US. Now, is it illegal? Well, no, it's not. But is it something that Trump administration wants to plug?
Correct.
Yes, I think so. And I think that's a long-term visa is separate, right? Like, you're clearly subject to the jurisdiction of the U.S., in my opinion, because you are working in the U.S., you are subject to federal taxes, you're subject to state tax if applicable, etc. So you're clearly working in the U.S. But when you come as a tourist, you're not working in the U.S. So the argument can be made that you're not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States in that sense. But also, I want to say one more thing, that we also should take everything that Trump does or announces that he will do with a pinch of salt. And I'll tell you why. Because Trump, the art of the deal author, right? He will go the full extreme of any announcement. And he knows that he's ultimately going to end up somewhere in the middle. So we shouldn't be too alarmed about some things that he announces, and even some things that he actually implements, because his goal is essentially to create a splash, to create the shock and awe, and then eventually reach a middle ground which, makes the most sense and is acceptable to everyone. And I agree with the other panelists that, the tech industry is the one which will, lobby the Trump administration the most, because they are the ones who stand to be affected if Indians no longer consider U.S. as their country of choice in terms of migration on a work visa. So we should, again, take it with a pinch of salt. Trump is, this is what's going to happen over the next 4 years. So, we'll just wait to see what ultimately pans out.
Right. Narendra Reddy, my last question to you. I mean, I would have thought you would have kind of countered what Kartikeya Tana said, but I saw you nodding and smiling. So you quite agree with what he has said in terms of the leadership style of Donald Trump.
What he does. One thing I want to assure you, Trump will not do any immigration reform that will be that will be against to the what do you call that? To the not, he will do anything to the benefit of the Indian immigrants, Indian visa holders. Because unnecessarily, I don't want Indian community to get so alarmed about this thing. And you will watch and see. Actually, once he finishes his immigration reforms, our green card applications will be processed much faster. That one you are waiting for 10, 20 years now, that will be much more faster, it will be moving. So Trump administration will not do any immigration reform. That is going to hurt Indian immigrants. Particularly, we are coming for jobs with a high skill. Those are high skill jobs, and also we are highly educated people who are coming from India. So Trump wants to keep them. Recently made a statement that at every commencement of the graduation ceremonies here, we should give foreign students, along with the degree, a green card. That kind of attitude he has. And also, American industry, tech industry cannot survive without Indian community coming from India. So these are the ones that I can guarantee. Please don't get alarmed. Don't get anybody, Indian parents who are living in India, to be alarmed about their children and all that. It will be Indian community is the one which will be much benefited out of this immigration reform. So not to worry.
Ravinder Sachdev, 30 seconds to you. Do you agree it in this sense? Because, I mean, with what's happened in the US politics, the way the elections was contested, and it's not just US, countries across the West are literally struggling with not just illegal immigrants, it's also the whole what do you call, the weight of immigrants who are coming in, the lack of jobs, the slump, so on and so forth. It's a reality across countries, and so is it in US. So with what you just heard Narendra Reddy say, do you just give in to it, or do you take that as well with a pinch of salt?
Is it for me, please?
That's right, that's right. Please go ahead. Ravinder Sachdev.
Yeah, sure. Great. Thanks. No, quick bullet points. One, I think I agree with what my eminent colleague said, but we should not live under any illusion that there would be any extra special provision for Indians or Indian Americans. The law would apply across the board for whosoever. But yeah, sure, we understand the point that Trump has an affinity there. One. Secondly, to the point of merit, absolutely. On that count, Kriti, my fellow alumna from American University, she would have a green card stapled to her passport the day she graduated, and I should have had 2 green cards stapled to my passport the day I graduated from AU. With that said, now, thirdly, there are ways to game the system. Definitely, yes. But the point is, the trend shows, let's look at the trend lines. The trend lines are immigrants or immigration is not welcome, especially illegal at the bottom level. Next level, the lower skilled. But most welcome are folks like the ones you have on your panel right now who've gone, done, contributed hugely, immensely to American society. That's the challenge for Trump, because America, remember, is made up of talent. Yesterday, Trump said, Elon Musk, he's a star. Who is Elon Musk? Elon Musk is a South African, came at age 18 or 19 to the US, a student, graduated, went into entrepreneurship. What is Google? Google is that. America is based upon those values of dream and talent. The day America stops that, America will be finished. I think Trump understands, everyone understands, but Trump, if he is looking to revive America, American leadership, he would, push for that and boost that. But at the same time, we cannot know what kind of executive orders Donald Trump will issue on January 20, morning 10 a.m., next day. So we got to be kind of, looking out that the trend is no doubt on this particular debate. I do think that this sense could go on. See, DACA, the dreamers, is a different category. They are the children born of illegal parents. What is being talked about right now is that people on H1, people on F1, forget F1 students, but H1, in line for a green card for 10, 20 years, marrying there, having a child, and that child not being an American citizen at age 21 has to go back to India. That will be the challenge which Trump will have to solve.
All right. Okay, I'm totally out of time. Narendra Reddy, you have your hands up, so please, 30 seconds.
Yeah, just one clarification is, no executive order will have a special provision for India or any country, or they can
Exactly.
discriminate against any country. What I meant was the provisions of Trump thinking and the provisions of executive orders will reflect his thinking. Those conditions, whatever they put, they will be favorable to the kind of immigrants that come from India. That's what I meant.
True, sir. Agreed. I mean, the talent, you want merit, you
All right,
want
we
talent,
just-
you want model citizens who contribute to the society. Absolutely, yes.
I think the aspirations are very clear. One would want the directions to be in line with these aspirations as well. But as our panelists very clearly summed it up, one doesn't know to what extent Donald Trump would go. And particularly, he is going to be the president of United States. So that's for him to decide. And I think a lot of Indians would be very closely watching this. Narendra Reddy, Robinder Sachdev, Kriti Upadhyay, as well as Kartikeya Tanna, thank you very much for your time. It's time for a very short break. On the other side, we'll bring you all the latest.